I'm a little depressed right now because I'd really like to go back to Pittsburgh. I just have so much work here. It's hard to imagine being able to move everything, relocate. Maybe it's possible. Although Ross's wife is in chemotherapy, he is willing to help me for receiving a few boxes, maybe finding somewhere I could lay over for a couple of days, making a phone call to my prospective landlord. But anyway, I'm just explaining my note of despondency. Um, I don't want it to be confusing to anybody. I understand Fridays for Future has a lot more important things on their mind than my feelings about what has happened. But all the same, I think I can explain a little better than most people why it is, the question that's foremost in Fridays for Future's mind right now is how can these fossil fuel cold warriors put their stupidities before rescuing the earth? The situation in Ukraine with breadbasket of Africa makes me want Donbass to be yielded and Odessa to be opened by the Ukraine in mutual agreement for the shipments of wheat that are so desperately needed. Aside from the politics of that situation, I think there's a lot more going on, as many people realize who have had a moment to read what I have prioritized in my own investigations. Beautiful, beautiful Greta Thunberg has come out with a message that I have long hoped someone would come out with. And it has intellectual predecessors in the power of the powerless. She's part of a long legacy of women who struggled to protect Native Americans, for example, seek rights for women in Muslim world, and believe that no one is too small to make a difference. My life can't be really seen as a handshake between Baklava and Greta Thunberg for the simple reason that I was postponed, nullified, and moved out of the way by Havel's forces who believed in empowering powerless citizens in Eastern Europe. Now, this was back in the 80s, and he was friendly to Bush, who I was not. And they seem to have missed the boat on Reagan's alliance behind the scenes with the Axis. But what I've learned about them sheds light on the situation today. The intellectual forebearers of Fridays for Future were known as the Samizdat, or Free Speech Movement, Charter 77, that led to the freedom of the Czech Republic, and Glasnost, which is wrongfully being pinned on the Ukraine, even though Havel's buddies like Bush and Clinton um, put the CIA in the Ukraine and gave an opportunity to Vlad to impale them. I think that what we're seeing isn't really what we're being told we're seeing. The real truth is that Václav Havel is clearly very well known to Vladimir Putin. In fact, he sells himself in Russia as an intellectual standard bearer for Russian scholarship. And although there may be some truth to that, it lies in the hidden game of Václav Havel's alliance and turning a blind eye to Reagan's alliance with the Axis, which is to say that Putin turned a blind eye to Reagan's alliance with the Axis and stands to profit from it through his remorseless engagement with Trumpy Tune. So how does that exactly work? One of the things that we're dealing with is the feeling in some circles that Putin held up a mirror to the West and said, if you can do it, why can't we? If you're going to ask us to change, then you should change. We shouldn't be destroying Syria and Yemen. And of course, scholarship is lacking about the CIA's involvement in attempts to use innocent people for nefarious gains of American high command. Now, the Axis relationship with Reagan, you might say, well, that's something that Russia would allege. Well, I don't think it's that simple because the Russian theologian P.D. Ouspensky is at root when he was friends with Prokofiev and Picasso, or at least on the same page as them. We saw the movement of exchanging a common theme in the superstructure of Axis cinema that tells a fourth dimensional story that covers for or announces the AIDS attack. As I've said, they hid something dirty somewhere dirty. And you can see this in the cinema symbology of the pornographic genocide they ran. This is Neighbor Pornographic that's using this genocide symbol. The C in the Star of David would be recognized by Axis as a genocide symbol. And they rerouted the Kennedy motorcade, used the image of the rerouted motorcade, and played out a theme of revenge for Hiroshima, or actually settlements of the war crime of Hiroshima. And it says it would be just like starting over. You see, Lenin was at root in all of this. So the leapfrog that went on with Axis cinema also went on behind the scenes in the strategies of Trumpington and Putin. The oligarch leapfrog behind the scenes of the nation state. Casper the Friendly Ghost leapfrog. Salvation being found in the Knights of Resignation, the Salvation Army of Salvation, and so on, which explains the Russian Orthodox Church sort of putting the finishing touches on the bonus attack of COVID. Now, Flame Over Africa was an ultimatum from these sugar plum fairies to do things their way, and we're living with that ultimatum as it plays out. And I'm aware that many people in Rusted Roots Gang, for example, really kicked my butt for coming out against Reagan. They really, really raided me and got me tortured. And I think it's important that the people who love Greta, myself included, do our level best to make sure that she's not misinformed, but even more to the point, misused by people who know how to strangle other people's public reputations in enigma. I think you can do me the return favor by recognizing that I'm not trying to render plastic anything about myself. I do have elderly senior concerns. I'm abstracted and I'm lonely, and I have fantasies about women and so forth. And you might say, oh, you have a fantasy about Greta. I love Greta. It's not a fantasy. It may be a fantasy that she would return my love, but that's not important. What's important is that she brought back my heart, and I love her. I love the feelings of the people who were in Charter 77 and the Samizdat movement. There's something beautiful about taking something you've written and allowing it to exchange hands. The people working with John Schulman at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Michael McGuff, said to me, well, when it changes hands, it's considered published. That's a very Soviet thing to say, because in the Soviet Union, it was legal to write something, but it was illegal to show anyone else. So maybe I'm breaking the law by trying to show you how much I love you, Greta. But consider it my Sam as that statement. Peace.